A 3-year-old girl named Rosie stood in a supermarket last Saturday morning. She reached for a box of cereal on the bottom shelf. Her mother grabbed it from her hands and said 4 words. "Put that back now." She said it loud enough for the entire aisle to hear. Rosie did not cry. She did not scream. She froze with both hands still open in the air. 3 aisles away, a Japanese mother watched her own 3-year-old pull a bottle of soy sauce off a shelf. The bottle wobbled. The mother crouched down to her daughter's eye level and whispered something. The girl put the bottle back herself. No shouting, no grabbing, no frozen child standing in an aisle with her hands open. 2 mothers, 2 children, 2 completely different brains being built in that moment. This video is for educational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional advice. If you have concerns about your child's behavior or development, please consult a qualified child psychologist or your pediatrician. In the next 20 minutes, I'm going to show you 3 things Japanese parents do that most Western parents have never been taught. And I'm going to show you what happens inside your child's brain every single time you raise your voice. This is not about shame. This is not about calling you a bad parent. You are here because you care. And caring enough to question the way you were raised is the bravest thing a parent can do. But I need to tell you something that will be difficult to hear. Everything you were taught about discipline through volume and authority is causing damage you cannot see with your eyes yet. Let me take you back to that supermarket. Rosie is still standing there. Her hands are still open. Her mother has already walked to the next aisle, pushing the trolley ahead without looking back at her daughter. Rosie's bottom lip begins to tremble. She does not move. She is 3 years old, and her legs are doing something her brain is commanding them to do. Her legs are telling her to stay perfectly still. That stillness is not obedience. That stillness is not a child who has learned her lesson. That is a 3-year-old nervous system that has just activated something called the freeze response inside her developing brain. Her heart rate has spiked. A hormone called cortisol is flooding through her tiny body right now. The part of her brain that processes language and learning has just temporarily shut itself down. She cannot think clearly. She cannot process what her mother just said. She cannot connect the cereal box to the shouting because the part of her brain responsible for that connection is currently offline. And the worst part is this: her mother believes it worked. Her mother believes the volume taught Rosie a lesson. Her mother will do this again tonight at bath time, and again tomorrow at breakfast. Every single time she raises her voice, Rosie's brain records it. Not the words, not the lesson, the threat. Her brain is keeping a running tally of every moment her primary caregiver became unsafe. By the time Rosie is 5 years old, her brain will have logged hundreds of these entries, and each one will have reshaped the architecture of her emotional regulation system in ways no parent can see. Now, let me take you to a kitchen in Osaka. A 3-year-old boy has just thrown his rice bowl across the table. The bowl hits the floor and cracks. Rice scatters everywhere across the wooden floor. His mother is standing at the counter. She does not raise her voice. She does not grab him. She turns around slowly and walks over to where her son is sitting with clenched fists. She kneels beside him. She places one hand flat on the table near his fist. She does not touch him yet. She waits 3 seconds, and then she says something that most Western parents would never think to say. She says his name quietly. Then she says the Japanese word for frustrated. She names his emotion before she addresses his behavior. She gives his brain a label for the chaos it is currently drowning in. And something extraordinary happens inside his brain when she does that. The prefrontal cortex begins to re-engage. The cortisol begins to drop. His breathing slows. His fists begin to open one finger at a time. She has not punished him. She has not threatened him. She has not raised her voice by a single decibel. And yet, in the next 40 seconds, he will pick up the bowl himself without being told. This is not magic. This is not some kind of cultural trick. This is neuroscience. And Japanese parents have been practicing it intuitively for centuries before brain scanners existed to prove why it actually works. But here is the question nobody asks. Why do Western parents default to volume? Why does raising your voice feel so instinctive when your child misbehaves? The answer will surprise you, and it has nothing to do with anger. You yell because you were yelled at. Your brain learned between the ages of 2 and 5 that loud voices equal authority, that correction requires volume, that a child who does not hear shouting is not being taught. Your parents yelled because their parents yelled. And their parents yelled because someone before them decided that the loudest voice in the room wins. This is not instinct, this is inherited programming running inside your brain. Japanese culture interrupted that cycle centuries ago. Not through therapy, not through parenting books. Through a concept so simple it will make you question everything you thought you knew about raising a child. The concept is called modeling. Japanese parents call it by different names, but the principle is identical. A child does not learn self-regulation from being told to calm down. A child learns it from watching you stay calm. If you want a child who does not scream when frustrated, then you must not scream when frustrated. If you want a child who speaks gently, then you must speak gently, even when every part of you wants to shout. Here's the mechanism. When you raise your voice at a 3-year-old, the sound enters through her ears and hits her auditory cortex within milliseconds, but her brain does not process it the way yours does. An adult brain hears yelling and can separate the message from the volume. A 3-year-old brain cannot do that yet. Her brain processes the volume first, the message second, and at high volume the message never arrives. The amygdala hijacks everything. This tiny almond-shaped structure deep inside Rosie's brain is designed to detect threats. And a raised voice from a primary caregiver registers as a threat every single time without exception. The amygdala does not care that you are teaching table manners or correcting bedtime behavior. It does not distinguish between a parent shouting about broccoli and a stranger shouting in genuine danger. The volume is the data. Once the amygdala fires, it sends a cascade of stress hormones through the child's entire body. Cortisol floods the bloodstream, adrenaline spikes, the heart rate jumps. Blood flow redirects away from the thinking brain toward the survival brain. The prefrontal cortex goes dark. That is the part of the brain responsible for reasoning and logic and impulse control. The exact skills you're trying to teach are hosted in the exact region your volume just shut down. You are literally locking the door to the classroom and then shouting the lesson through the wall. The child hears noise. She feels fear. She learns nothing. And her brain files the experience under one single category. Unsafe. Not naughty child learns lesson. Not child corrected by loving parent. Unsafe. That is the label her brain assigns. And every repetition reinforces the file. Every shout adds another page to the same document inside her head. Japanese mothers in one observational study were found to use raised voices significantly less frequently than Western mothers during discipline moments. And their children showed measurably higher emotional regulation scores by age 5. Not because Japanese children are biologically different, not because Japanese culture is inherently superior, because the technique Japanese parents use speaks directly to the part of the brain that is actually listening during a conflict. Remember that mother in Osaka? She crouched down and named her son's emotion. That single act does something inside a child's brain that volume can never do. It activates a process neuroscientists call affect labeling. When you name a child's emotion out loud, the prefrontal cortex engages, not the survival system, not the threat detector, the thinking brain. The child hears the word frustrated and their brain begins to organize the chaos. It is like handing a drowning person a rope. The emotion is the water, the label is the rope. Without the label, the child thrashes. With it, they can begin to pull themselves toward the surface. Western parents skip this step almost every time. We jump straight from behavior to correction. Your child throws a bowl and you say, "Stop that right now." You have addressed the action without acknowledging the storm behind it. Japanese parents reverse the order. They address the storm first. They name the feeling. They wait for the brain to process the label. Then, and only then, do they address the behavior, and the child is actually listening. This is not slow. This takes less than 30 seconds. But those 30 seconds create a fundamentally different neurological experience for the child. One that builds emotional vocabulary instead of tearing down emotional safety every time it happens. There is a second concept Japanese parents use that most Western parents have never heard of. It is the idea that the parent and child are not opponents. They are on the same team facing the problem together. In Western discipline, the structure is usually parent versus child. You did something wrong. I correct you. You comply. I win. The child learns that conflict means somebody loses and that somebody is always them. But wait, because this gets even more important. In Japanese homes, the structure is parent and child versus the problem. The rice bowl is on the floor. We look at it together. We solve it together. Nobody loses. This tiny shift in framing changes everything about what the child's brain stores. Instead of recording conflict with caregiver, the brain records collaboration with caregiver. Instead of filing threat, the brain files safety and teamwork. Rosie's mother in the supermarket created an opponent dynamic. She grabbed, she shouted, she walked away. Rosie's brain filed the experience as a small defeat, one of hundreds that will accumulate across the years of her childhood. The Osaka mother created a team dynamic. She crouched, she named, she waited. Her son's brain filed the experience as a moment where his biggest person in the world sat beside him inside a difficult feeling. That difference compounds. Over hundreds of interactions, it builds two entirely different operating systems inside two children's brains. One child learns that big feelings are dangerous. The other learns that big feelings have names and endings. There is a third technique Japanese parents use, and this one might be the most difficult for Western parents to accept. They allow the feeling to exist without rushing to fix it or silence it immediately. When a child cries after dropping an ice cream, a Western parent might say, "Stop crying, it is just ice cream." The intention is comfort. The effect is dismissal. The child learns that their sadness is wrong. A Japanese parent in the same moment might sit beside the child and say nothing at all for 10 seconds. Then quietly acknowledge that losing the ice cream felt really disappointing. Then wait again while the child processes. No fixing, no distracting, no rushing. Just sitting inside the emotion with the child until the child's brain finishes the cycle on its own. This practice builds something that no amount of shouting or correcting can ever build. It builds a child who trusts their own emotional system. A child who learns that sadness rises and then falls, that frustration arrives and then passes, that anger is not an emergency. It is just weather moving through. Now, here is where I need to tell you something that might change the way you see yourself as a parent. Because everything I have described so far has been about the child's brain. But there is another brain in the room. Yours. When you yell at your child, your own brain is also in a hijacked state. Your own amygdala has fired. Your own cortisol has spiked. Your own prefrontal cortex has gone dim enough to make you believe volume is a parenting tool. You are not choosing to yell. You are reacting from a part of your brain that learned this pattern when you were 3 years old, standing in your own kitchen, listening to your own parent's raised voice just like Rosie. This is the cycle parent yells. Child's brain records it. Child grows up. Child becomes parent. Parent yells. The volume passes forward like an inheritance nobody asked for, and nobody knows how to refuse until someone shows them another way. Japanese culture found another way. Not through advanced neuroscience, not through expensive therapy, through the simple radical belief that a child deserves the same respect you would give another adult during a disagreement. You would not scream at your colleague for spilling coffee in a meeting. You would not shout at your partner across a restaurant for ordering the wrong dish. But somehow a 3-year-old is expected to absorb that volume. The reason is power. A child cannot leave. A child cannot argue back. A child cannot fire you or end the friendship. A child is trapped in the relationship with you, and their brain knows it, and that is why volume hits harder. Every piece of research on this topic reaches the same conclusion. Yelling achieves short-term compliance at the cost of long-term connection. Your child stops the behavior in the moment because they are afraid, not because they understand. And here is the inversion that changes everything. Children who are never yelled at do not become undisciplined. They become more disciplined. Studies show they develop stronger impulse control and higher emotional vocabulary and deeper capacity for empathy. If you're watching this right now and you have learnt something that is changing the way you think about raising your child, then I need to ask you to subscribe to this channel right now before you forget. The reason I ask is because every video on this channel is built to protect your child's brain and your relationship with them. And if this one has helped you, then the next one will help you even more. Now I want to give you something practical. Because understanding the science is important, but you need tools you can use tonight, at bath time, at bedtime, in the supermarket, in the car, at the dinner table. Technique number 1, get low. Japanese parents instinctively lower their bodies during conflict with a child. They crouch, they kneel, they sit on the floor. They bring their eyes to the same level as the child's eyes. This is not symbolic. This is neurological. When a large body towers over a small body and raises its voice, the child's brain registers a physical threat. The size difference amplifies the volume into something the brain reads as danger. When you crouch down, you remove the size threat. You bring your face to their visual field. You make eye contact at their level, and the child's brain shifts from defense mode to connection mode within seconds. Tonight, when your child refuses to brush their teeth, do not stand above them and repeat yourself louder. Walk over, crouch down, wait until your eyes are level with theirs, then speak. You will be astonished at what happens. Technique number 2. Name before you correct. Before you address the behavior, address the emotion. Say the feeling out loud. You seem really frustrated right now. You look like something made you angry. Your face is telling me you are sad. You do not need to be right about the emotion. The act of guessing is enough. When a child hears an adult attempt to name what they feel, the brain begins the process of organizing the internal chaos. This takes 3 seconds. 3 seconds between the behavior and your correction. But those 3 seconds give the prefrontal cortex enough time to re-engage so that when you do address the behavior, the child can actually hear you. Technique number 3, wait. This is the hardest one. After you name the emotion, do nothing. Stand in the discomfort of your child's big feeling without fixing it or rushing it or distracting them away from it. Japanese parents are extraordinarily skilled at this. They sit beside a crying child and let the cry finish. They do not say shh or stop or it is okay. They let the wave move through and they stay present. Your instinct will be to end the noise. That instinct is coming from your own discomfort, not from your child's need. Your child needs you to prove that their biggest feelings will not make you leave the room. When you stay through the feeling, you teach the child something no lecture can teach. You teach them that emotions end. That sadness does not last forever. That anger is not an emergency, that they are safe with you. Technique number 4, solve together. Once the emotion has passed, and only once it has passed, turn toward the problem as a team. The rice bowl is on the floor. What should we do about it together? Not what did you do? Not why did you do that? What should we do? The word "we" changes the entire neurological framing. It moves the child from defendant to collaborator, from powerless to capable, from alone to partnered. Rosie's mother in that supermarket could have crouched down and said, "I can see you really wanted that cereal. Let us look at it together and decide if it goes in the trolley." 30 seconds. No volume required. Rosie's brain would have filed that moment completely differently. Not frozen hands, not racing heart, not cortisol flooding her bloodstream, instead connection, collaboration. A mother who saw her. A moment that felt safe instead of terrifying. I know what some of you are thinking right now. You are thinking this sounds lovely, but my child is different. My child does not respond to quiet voices. My child needs firm boundaries and clear consequences. You are right about one thing. Your child absolutely needs firm boundaries and clear consequences. But firm does not mean loud, and clear does not mean frightening. Japanese parents are among the most boundaried parents on the planet. Their children have strict routines. They have clear expectations about behavior at school and at home and in public. Japan is not a permissive culture. It is a culture that separates volume from authority completely and absolutely. Authority does not come from being the loudest person in the room. Authority comes from being the calmest person in the room. The parent who stays quiet during chaos teaches the child that calm people are in control. The parent who shouts during chaos teaches the child that nobody is in control. And a child who believes nobody is in control becomes a child who cannot regulate themselves because they have never seen regulation modeled by the person who matters most. If you are sitting here right now feeling a weight in your chest because you have been yelling at your child for years, then I need you to hear this next part very carefully, because it is the most important thing I will say today. You have not broken your child. You have not ruined your child. The brain is plastic. It rewires. It heals. It adapts. Every single interaction from tonight forward is a chance to build a new pattern inside your child's head. The Japanese mothers I have studied are not perfect. No parent on this planet is perfect. What they do differently is they repair. When they make a mistake, they acknowledge it. They crouch down and they say, "I'm sorry." That repair is more powerful than the mistake. A child whose parent apologizes after raising their voice learns something extraordinary. They learn that adults are accountable, that relationships survive conflict. That sorry is not weakness, it is strength. Tonight you can start. One moment, one interaction. Your child spills something at dinner. Instead of reacting from volume, react from connection. Crouch down. Name the feeling. Wait. Solve together. That is the entire framework in 12 words. Crouch, name, wait, solve. 4 steps, 30 seconds. And over weeks and months, you will watch your child begin to change. Not because you forced them to change, because you changed first and their brain followed yours. Their tantrums will still come. Their defiance will still arrive. Their big feelings will still explode without warning. But the recovery will get shorter. The meltdowns will lose their power. And the connection between you will get stronger. Because you will have stopped being the source of the storm. You will have become the shelter inside the storm. And a child whose parent is the shelter grows a brain that knows how to find calm on its own. I see this pattern every week. Parents who were raised with volume, raising children with volume and wondering why their child cannot manage emotions. The answer is in the mirror. The change starts with the reflection staring back at you. Japanese parents understood this intuitively for centuries. Western neuroscience has now confirmed it with brain scans and cortisol measurements and longitudinal studies tracking children from age 3 through to adulthood. The data is unambiguous, and it says the same thing. Volume does not teach. Volume does not correct. Volume does not discipline. Volume activates threat detection systems inside a developing brain, and those systems, once activated, repeatedly reshape the architecture of emotional processing for the rest of that child's life. Quiet teaches. Presence teaches. Naming the feeling teaches. Sitting beside a child while the storm passes teaches. Solving the problem together teaches. These are the tools that build a brain capable of regulating itself without external pressure. I want you to imagine Rosie 10 years from now. She is 13. She is sitting in her bedroom after an argument with a friend at school. She feels the anger rising in her chest, and she does not know what to call it. She has no vocabulary for the feeling because nobody ever named it for her. She was told to stop. She was told to behave. She was told to calm down. But nobody ever said you seem frustrated and then waited. Now imagine the boy from Osaka at 13. Same argument with a friend at school. He sits on his bed and he feels the anger, and he recognizes it. He has a word for it because his mother gave him one. He breathes. He waits. The feeling moves through him like weather. And then he picks up his phone and sends his friend a message. Not a cruel one, an honest one, because his brain knows how to do this. That is the difference. Not intelligence, not culture, not luck. Vocabulary. A child who was given words for their feelings becomes an adult who can navigate conflict without destruction. A child who was given volume becomes an adult who freezes. The cereal aisle or the kitchen floor, the supermarket or the Osaka dining table, every single interaction is a vote for the brain your child will carry into adulthood. And you are casting that vote right now. If this video has changed the way you think about raising your child, then please subscribe and leave a comment below telling me this. What is the one phrase you are going to stop saying to your child starting tonight? That comment matters because it is a commitment. When you write it down, you are telling your own brain that this is not just something you watched. This is something you are going to do starting at bedtime tonight. The cycle of yelling has moved through generations. Your grandparents yelled. Your parents yelled. You have been yelling. But Rosie does not have to yell at her children. The inheritance can stop in your living room today. Japanese parents did not discover this through research papers or parenting courses. They discovered it through centuries of a culture that values harmony over authority and connection over compliance. And it shows in their children's brains and behavior. You do not need to become Japanese. You do not need to move to Osaka. You need 4 words: crouch, name, wait, solve, and you need the courage to try them once tonight and see what your child does. I have watched parents transform their relationship with their children in under 2 weeks using nothing more than these 4 steps. Not because the steps are complicated, because the steps replace the one thing that was causing all the damage. This video is for educational purposes and is not a substitute for professional support. If your child shows signs of persistent emotional distress or behavioral challenges, please consult a qualified child psychologist or pediatrician for a personalized assessment. Every child is different. Every family has its own pressures and its own history and its own set of challenges that nobody outside that home fully understands. There is no single method that works for every child everywhere. But the brain science is consistent. Across cultures and across decades, the research shows the same pattern. Volume activates threat. Calm activates connection. And connection is the foundation every other piece of healthy development is built on. Rosie is still 3 years old. Her brain is still being built. Every synapse is still forming. Every neural pathway is still being laid. The architecture is not finished. And you are the architect, whether you realize it or not. The blueprint is not written in books. It is written in every interaction between you and your child, from the moment they wake up to the moment they fall asleep. Every word, every tone, every silence, every choice to stay quiet. Japanese parents chose quiet, and their children grew brains that could weather storms without breaking apart. Your child deserves that same chance, and it starts with one decision. The next time your child tests, you choose connection over volume. Crouch down, name the feeling, wait through the storm, solve it together, 4 steps, 30 seconds. A completely different brain. That is what Japanese parents know. And now you know it too. Use it tonight. Your child is waiting,